Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men have asked me for the right words to say to be more attractive, desirable, and more of a leader. And I've found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines. Because at the root of a connected and affectionate relationship and being more effective and inspiring at work is your ability to influence others. But most often, influence is not gained or lost with words. It's from what I call the invisible factors. So I created a quick guide for you called 3 Ways Men Lose Influence at Work and with Women, so you can understand how these invisible factors work and what has women and colleagues both more inspired to say yes. I think you're also going to be surprised to find out the moment when your influence actually begins. So grab the guide for free at ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/3ways. That's ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/3 and the word ways, WAYS. Or you can text ALIVE to 44144. That's the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144. I hope you enjoy the guide and this episode. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I am excited today to talk about getting real and how to be real in relationships, all the way from romantic to family to friendships to work. And you know what I find from having coached people for the last 15 years is that so often we are afraid to get real. And one of the most common questions I get is, well, how do I say that? You know, they come in with an issue with someone, and it's like, how do I say that? And I'm like, well, exactly like you just said it. But there's this fear that if we say something that's too real, you know, that people are going to leave us or get upset with us. But our guest today is an expert in how to get real and how to say things in a way to get closer to people. So we have Dr. Susan Campbell here. Susan, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Shayna.
And for those of you who haven't read Susan's amazing, what is it? Is it 10 books now that you've written?
Yes.
On relationships and conflict resolution. She's delivered, she's written these books. She's delivered hundreds of seminars and workshops internationally, has counseled thousands of individuals and couples. She's been on CNN's Night News and Good Morning America. And she's also been accomplished in the business world and directed think tanks and run nonprofit organizations and consulted Fortune 500 companies. She's guest lectured at Harvard, Stanford, and UCLA business schools. So she has, an incredible depth of knowledge, as well as, you're an adventurer. You've been living on a sailboat and lived in other cultures, and, you've made millions and lost millions. So I feel really excited to have this conversation today.
Thanks for reminding me of all of that stuff that I've done in this one life.
Yes, right, in this one life. Well, okay, let's start out then. If that's reminding you, let's see first, and I love this because we already have, we have to be real here, right? Because this is our topic. So, what would you say, what's most inspiring to you these days in the realm of getting real, or what's even come beyond that?
What still inspires me most is other people's pain. I guess in my younger days, what inspired me most was my own pain. Uh-huh. That's why I wrote the book, The Couple's Journey, back in the late 70s, came out in 1980. It was because I had gone through several divorces already and wanted to learn what couples knew that I didn't. But now I'm not in pain about anything other than the general state of humanity.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah, that's real, and that hurts my heart. And I also know from where I've worked to get to is that you can both feel the joy of being in the present moment and having just just a blessed life like I do, and
Mm-hmm.
at the same time hold that paradox of the pain of the world.
Mm.
So that inspires me just personally, but work-wise, I think the thing that inspires me is other people's pain.
Mm.
Because every day I hear clients, I did a teleclass yesterday, and I hear clients say, they don't value me where I work.
Uh-huh.
And when I listen deeper into the complaint, they don't value me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of stuff in somebody's imagination. He's expecting to be treated a certain way, but he's never told them how he likes to be treated.
Mm.
Same thing in relationships, expecting, this is, it just breaks my heart. Because I'm old, I can say this. Some of the naive assumptions that some younger people make about what you can expect in a relationship.
Yeah.
Basically, it boils down to expecting the other person should know what I need if I tell them once, or if I hint around, or if they really love me.
Well, right. And then we've been raised in this culture in different ways, men and women both have been raised to not really ask for what they want. And, a lot of women I meet and have coached, they feel like they're too needy or they're too high maintenance. And then the men come to me and they don't want to ask because they think they should already know.
Yes.
So, I'm curious about that too. Like, as you've worked with these thousands of people, and especially men, because this podcast is geared toward men, what do you see gets in the way the most of men getting real?
Well, when you mentioned they think that they should already know, and this is a common syndrome among males, the way our males are conditioned. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of the current Me Too movement, and the men saying, well, what's okay now? And that's really coming up. I've done some webinars on this for men and women to share. And it's like, we're looking for some rules so we don't get into trouble with women. And here's the advice. Could you just stop looking for rules and look at the woman in front of you and let her know that you are concerned about this, that you are feeling this fear of doing the wrong thing, and that you can ask her, what's okay? Is it still okay? Is it still okay if I just come up and grab you from behind, or whatever, whatever you're wondering?
Yeah.
Or is it still okay to say, hi, cutie, in the workplace?
Yeah.
You just have to ask the individual women, because there is no one way that women are.
Well, right. That is true. And every day.
You should know that. But it takes guts to look stupid. And
well, that's what I was going to say. It takes
any man who asks me that, whether it's in the boardroom or the bedroom, what do you like? I just feel so much more love and respect for that man. Yes.
Yes, I do too. And I imagine that men listening might find themselves kind of in a pickle too, where it's like, wait, now I'm supposed to go ask every woman who I work with how she wants to be treated and how to, relate to her in a way that she feels respected. And so I'm curious what you would say to that.
I would say, well, don't make a rule out of that. You're going to have to ask every woman. It's when it's in your heart and mind in a moment, in a given moment. See, what Getting Real is about, that's the title of the book that that you guys know the most about. I've written. The whole idea is what's real is what's going on for you in this very moment, not looking for some generic prescription of how to be a good man.
Yes.
So if you're wondering something, then you ask. But if you're not wondering, don't ask.
I love that you just made that distinction, right? Because I think it really is easy to turn even non-rules into rules. And so in this, it's like, all right, show up in the present moment. And if it's there for you, or if there's some confusion or there's some frustration, then actually ask and talk about it.
Yeah, and one of the best devices that I know for bringing a conversation between yourself and another person, let's say I'm talking to a man, so between yourself and a woman that maybe you're interested in, let's say, into the present moment, is the little device that's the first chapter of my book, Saying What's Real. Mm-hmm. And that device is either say out loud or say to yourself this phrase, hearing you say that, I feel. That's, and then ... hearing you say that, I feel afraid. Somebody says to you, you're late for our dinner. I was expecting you half an hour ago. Well, you could get defensive and start explaining yourself. Or if you were to check in with yourself and notice that you're starting to feel defensive, then you're all of a sudden more present.
Yes.
And then you're a little more choiceful. Maybe you still will offer an explanation, but at least you'll do it with awareness rather than this automatic defensive, what I call control pattern, because people just automatically go into explaining as a way to stay safe and in control.
Well, that's a really great point too, right? That it feels safer to defend or to be in control than it does to actually be vulnerable. And, in your book, you said 80% of the average person's communications are geared toward controlling things that are actually beyond the person's control. And so, right, it sounds like most of the time, most of us are walking around in these conversations that are not real, or they're not present in the moment. They're more defended or explanations or blaming.
We're on automatic. That's kind of the key. The key is to look at when you're on automatic.
Yeah.
And automatic usually means you're protecting or defending your ego, your self-image. You want people to see you a certain way. So when I say that 80% of communication comes from the intent to control, I don't mean the obvious forms of control like being bossy or manipulative. What I explain in the book, Getting Real, and then much better in my latest book, 5-Minute Relationship Repair, I explain that human beings have all these automatic patterns. One of them is explaining and defending, but one of them might be, instead of asking for what you want, asking indirectly, like, wouldn't you like to go out for sushi tonight? Instead of saying, hey, I'd like to go out for sushi. What about
you? Are you cold?
Are you cold? That's all that. Or just staying silent can be a control pattern to avoid getting yourself into trouble by speaking the truth.
Yeah.
Or just agreeing too quickly to something that somebody asks you before checking in. And is this really true for me? Like agreeing to help with something and later regretting it.
It's painful.
Millions of control patterns.
Yeah, no, it's painful as you talk. I'm like, okay, I do every single one of those, and it's much better than it was 20 years ago, but I still catch myself doing them. And, I remember a situation a couple years ago where I recognized that I could see the tiredness I was dating a man. I could see the tiredness in his eyes. And so I just kind of dulled myself down to what I imagined he might be available for as we were together. And later, as we talked about it, he was like, sure, I was tired, but if you had asked me, to go take a walk or go do something else, like I probably would have been up for that. But instead I found myself, like you said, just not even asking, not even necessarily knowing what I wanted and needed in that moment.
Well, that's a beautiful example, Shana, because there's an exercise in the Getting Real book on the chapter on revising. It means revising something later on. So later on, you realized that you had kind of gone on automatic and just assumed that this guy wasn't up for much. And then you sort of depress your own energy. But if you do realize that later, a lot of times, or realize anything later, that you were in a pattern, or you said yes when you wished you'd said no, you can go out and come in again.
Yeah.
And go back. In most cases, some it's not appropriate, but you can go back and say, when we were together last night, I noticed I was doing this, And if I had it to do over, here's what I would have done, or even better, here's what I would have said, and say the exact words the second time around that you would have said, and that trains you to be more present in the future.
I think that is so useful for couples. And, often when I'm coaching too, I talk about the debrief. It's like,
Yeah.
if you have an experience together, debriefing it after to say what went well, what you would have liked differently. And even that's challenging for people to imagine. But then what you're saying, right, I could see can be even more challenging to imagine, like, wow, I'm going to go back and I'm going to say to someone, this is what I didn't say, or this is what I would have said if I really was being honest. And I think it's so powerful, especially in a long-term relationship, but even, in a shorter relationship or at work. I mean, all of these places it can really benefit.
Yeah, and even if it's not appropriate to go back, like maybe some person you're not in a couple with, or it's at work and you don't have that kind of contract with the person, you can do it at the end of the day for yourself.
Yes.
Just I call it the daily authenticity inventory. When didn't I show up for myself fully today? I find myself on automatic. If I had it to do over, what would I say? And there's another question in there, which is what excuses or reasons do I give myself for not? That leads to some self-insight. So you can add that one in there.
Okay, so daily authenticity
inventory. It's one of the most useful tools that I offer my coaching clients. So I
love that. And I love it even if you aren't saying it to someone else. I mean, really the most important relationship you have is with yourself, right? And so if you can actually be recognizing and, starting to reveal things to yourself. I remember a question I used to use years ago that I forgot about was like, what truth am I not letting myself know? Which is a weird question, but it kind of gets to the heart of that. And as you let yourself realize, I could have said that, or I wanted to say that, or I didn't ask for this, then I would imagine you become stronger to be able to say that in the next conversation.
Yeah, even if you just say it to yourself. But I counsel to say the exact words so that you can feel, gee, it's even risky saying it by myself in my own bedroom.
Right.
It can be kind of risky, especially if it's, a truth that has never been spoken before.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, in the 5-Minute Relationship Repair, your new book, it sounds like you really help couples with this to be able to see how they're not getting real or what's getting in the way of when there's conflict.
Yes. Whenever there's any kind of conflict that leads to somebody either blowing up, shutting down, or going into some kind of just control pattern where they're just on automatic, I counsel the couples to come back later. I'll give you more detail on this if we decide to go there, but come back later and do a revision. And even when you're terribly triggered and you're both triggered and one person shuts down, the other person blows up, and maybe there's some name calling or at least some labeling, or you're always too tired, that kind of thing. Whenever anybody says always or never, that's a signal that they're coming from a triggered place. And triggered basically means you've totally gone on automatic, and the part of the brain that goes into fight, flight, or freeze has gotten in charge. And once that part of the brain gets in charge, couples or even dating partners or even at work, you need to pause. Couples need a pause agreement. At work, it's harder to get that, but some sophisticated workplaces now have invited me in to talk about triggers, and they know that people bring their triggers to work just like
like we have them at home.
Yeah, and triggers are things like the fear of rejection, abandonment, being criticized, being controlled, being unimportant. And I imagine most of our listeners at least can pick one of those that sounds familiar. in my workshops, I do these this favorite fears, or not in workshops, usually in lectures. I do a favorite fears contest, and I'll just ask for a show of hands. How many people have a fear of abandonment? How many people have a fear of being controlled? And geez, just about everybody raises their hand at all of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, right? If someone can't think of one, then I'm in the doghouse because they all apply.
They're all there at some point.
Yeah.
So the 5-Minute Relationship Repair book is actually a self-help workbook for partnerships where you first learn to identify what your triggers are, which means what's the core fear? Like, is your core fear more about being abandoned, or is it more like being smothered, controlled, or overwhelmed? Yeah. And sometimes those two attachment styles get together because they have so much to learn from each other once they learn how to work with their triggers.
Yeah.
So we have a really a 4-part formula in this book. Pause, then calm your nervous system. Because first of all, pause, because if you keep talking while your reptilian brain is in charge, you're just going to do more
deep shit.
Yeah, it's deep. Don't dig the hole deeper. Stop digging. So pause, then calm your nervous system. And I wish we would teach in schools. Some schools do teach self-regulation.
Yeah, they're starting to.
Breathing practices, body awareness practices. Some of us have our own practices, but the book offers several good ones. And then inquire, look at, feel the feeling that got triggered. And it just starts out with some agitated body sensation, or maybe you don't have feelings right away. Maybe you have thoughts like, she can't treat me that way, and you start with wherever you are and find the feeling and just follow it and stay with it.
Like, so for that one, she can't treat me that way, that's the thought. And then you guide people
thought, but there's a feeling.
Feel the feeling. Yeah.
Always, whenever there's a charged thought like that, it's always good to ask yourself, or for coaches to ask their clients, as you say those words, what are you feeling? You notice in your body. This is sort of the basic getting real intervention. Yeah. So I train getting real coaches, and it's really not that hard if you have confidence in this practice, because you've done it enough with yourself. You just stay with it, and your attention will go where it needs to go to find maybe that place of hurt or that unfinished business from the past, or maybe it's not even too far in the past, but you'll find that bundle of emotional pain that you've been trying to hide from or run away from with all your defensive patterns. And you can open up your triggers, force you kind of to see these things. So that's the good news. It's good to have somebody who triggers you. And then
I like that perspective, right? That actually it's good to have them, because then
otherwise, how would you know? If you're just alone, in an ashram, how would you know? Although I've actually found quite good benefits from meditation too.
Yes, for sure.
But back to relationships, which are the crash course, the fast course, I think. And if you just follow your sensations and your feelings, and some painful memory comes up, you can hold that younger version of yourself, or just that hurting part of yourself, with compassion, letting it have its pain, not saying, oh, you're great just because that guy mistreated you, others will like you. None of this phony reassurance, just the pain is real in that moment. Yeah. Or as a child, it was real, and it probably didn't get to complete itself. Human beings are just full of unprocessed emotional pain from the past. And so the ability to stay with a feeling and let it complete itself, at least a little bit. It's sort of like you're doing therapy on yourself. So that's all. Right after you get triggered, you pause, you calm, you inquire, I call it a compassionate self-inquiry. Then you're ready to go back and fill out your repair script. I've offered several repair scripts
I love it.
in the book, and also you can get the workbook free on the website, 5minuterelationship-repair.com.
And so you have these scripts where people can
just order. Even if you don't order the book, you can get the scripts anyway. And this say, I'm sorry that I called you a cold fish, I was triggered. It was probably my fear of that my needs don't matter, acting up here. And so you've done enough self-inquiry to take responsibility for the fact that you were in pain and you were lashing out from an automatic reptilian place. And now you got your higher brain back online. And that's the part of the brain that can love and care about the other person. So you got your empathy back. And so you reveal. Then the repair is basically a giant reveal, and then of what was really going on, and then an asking for some simple reassurance, like, if I had it to do over, I would have told you I needed to feel important, and I would have asked for reassurance. The relationship is important to you, and leave it at that. It's a very short repair script, and that's why I call it the 5-minute relationship repair. You shouldn't have to do 3 hours of processing after a fight.
No.
If you're doing that, that means you're just explaining and defending and getting back into it.
Yeah.
And
right. Unless it's taken you somewhere else.
Do the makeup after a fight all wrong. Sex is good, but you do need to talk sometimes.
Well, right. I mean, if you don't actually talk, or you don't actually get to what you're saying, that vulnerable piece underneath, then it just keeps repeating itself and repeating itself.
Exactly. You really do need to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel inspired by that. And I remember one time when I was married years ago, I think at some point we instituted we can only fight for 10 minutes or something like that. And we looked at the clock one time and we're like, okay, that's 10 minutes. And then we did some time to calm down and, go our separate ways, and realize we used to spend hours doing that.
What a brilliant thing that you guys discovered on your own. Well, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it probably came from some book or workshop or whatever we were exploring at the time. But, I love what you're saying too, as far as it doesn't have to take that long to repair. And actually what it seems to me is that you're getting to the heart of the matter, right? Instead of defending, explaining, all of this stuff, talking around it, you're actually going right to the most vulnerable place, which could be a challenge for a lot of people, and saying, this is what I was really feeling, and this is the inadequacy or the fear or the part of me that doesn't have it all together.
Vulnerability. You're really revealing a vulnerability, and then your partner feels safe and they want to reassure you. You're not attacking them anymore.
Well, and especially, I mean, this is interesting because, gearing this toward men, a lot of men have come to me and said, my wife is still attacking me, so I will get vulnerable. And she's still, on a rampage. And I'm curious how you work with couples when that happens.
Well, I would try to get them both on the same page with the practice. It's very important that couples together. Have agreed upon practices for dealing with their differences and upset.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it and your wife doesn't, your partner doesn't, tell her how much you love her and how much you value this relationship and how important it is that you guys develop some ongoing practices, because otherwise you're afraid it won't work.
Yeah. Right. And I think there is the reality that sometimes people have to get honest and realize, if someone's going to keep harassing me or abusing me or making demands or not listening to me, and if I keep getting vulnerable and someone's not meeting me there, then the relationship may not be the right one, or it's time to get some counseling and some help.
Well, tell the person first, if they won't get the counseling and you've tried that tack, and you're thinking of ending it, give them a little warning first and say, I'm not sure that I can still stay in this relationship if we don't do something like this. And maybe it sounds like a threat, but it's, I have a right to want a good life. I want a good life. My preference is a good life with you.
Yeah.
But if I can't have it with you, I don't want it like this.
Yeah.
So you really have to stand your ground and ask strongly sometimes for what you want.
Yeah. And I
People
appreciate.
give up a little too soon. They say, oh, I've tried this, but have you tried really putting it to her, you know?
Right.
This is like an ultimatum.
Yeah.
And
And
you don't
right.
use ultimatums frivolously, but you use them when they're real.
Right. And really, I love the piece that you're talking about too, of that strength. And, like you said before, the triggers actually call out or help us see and grow in these parts of ourselves. And, that to be called out to actually stand up for yourself and put a stake in the ground and say, I'm worth this and I need this. And, this is the kind of relationship I want and need to have. And I want you to do it with me. I mean, it takes an incredible amount of whatever you want to call it, chutzpah or strength or balls or, but without that, I think we can end up in these patterns of relationship that aren't fulfilling and that are, not respecting each other.
Yeah. And there will be some partners, who are so defended that it's just too scary to do this work. But if you can get them to a skilled counselor, usually the counselor can help them feel safe enough. Because I've had a lot of men drag women into my office.
Interesting.
The other way around, but not necessarily, not in my practice.
Yeah.
I'm like you, Shane. I'm very man friendly. I've always had tremendous empathy for men. I've had a great relationship with my dad, and I'm pretty sure that has something to do with it.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear, right, that not only are women dragging men in, but men are dragging women too. One of the things that I was curious about in reading Getting Real is the piece around welcoming feedback.
Yeah.
And, I find that in my own life, I've become more and more open to that, but it takes a willingness to feel like some part of me is, dying or burning alive inside. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you guide people to receive feedback from, friends, family, partners, business partners, and how people can get in the right state in a way to do that.
Good. Yeah, I think asking for feedback is a very important skill because it helps people clear or let go of what they might have been carrying about you. In the workplace, for example, if you want to advance in the workplace, it's really a good idea to let people say any negative stuff they've got to your face.
Right.
And you really listen openly. I'll talk about a little more about how to receive and listen in a minute, and you listen openly and they feel heard, and that completes it for them. For most people, most situations, once you get to express something and you feel heard, it doesn't take up all that mind share anymore. You kind of let go of what you were carrying. So that's a political thing. I mean, in the workplace, if you need to be politically savvy enough to go around asking for feedback from all the significant people. Okay, so now in an intimate relationship, it's kind of obvious why it would be important, because you don't want your partner to have a wall up between you and her or him. And the way to break those walls down is to say, could we talk about how we're both feeling about how our relationship is going? Any feelings or needs that you'd like to express that maybe I haven't been paying attention to well enough? Ask that question.
That is a great question.
And then if you're already in an ongoing relationship, I like the question. It's a two-part check-in question. It's you agree every week or so to say, honey, is there anything I've done or said that's created distance between us? Real simple. And also, is there anything, when you finish that one, is there anything I've done or said that has created closeness between us?
So you're getting both sides of it.
Yeah, and you both ask each other that question. And I like that one for even a new couple, because in the beginning, you're teaching the other person how you like to be treated.
Yes.
And the romance stage is the most malleable stage of all. I talk about the 5 stages in my book, The Couple's Journey, by the way. And it's still a brilliant book, even though I wrote it in my 20s.
You wrote it in your 20s?
I love that book.
Oh, wow.
So just, it helps people know that there's life beyond the romance stage, and there's life beyond the power struggle stage, which is the second stage.
Another book, yeah.
Yes, power struggle stages. There is a book about that called Beyond the Power Struggle, which was the sequel. Those are kind of old books, but they're still pretty relevant.
Well, right. I mean, and this one, you said Getting Real was the first one you wrote?
Oh, the first book I wrote was for teachers.
Okay.
Called Expanding Your Teaching Potential.
Well, my whole point is that however old they are,
it's a couple's journey beyond the power struggle. Getting Real is only 20 years ago. That's fairly recent in my life. Yeah. I've been doing what I do for 50 years.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being, so wise and willing. And I can feel in you, like you said in the beginning, you're not hurting, you're not struggling right now like you did when you were younger. And I just feel so grateful that you used your pain and your struggle to help us and to teach us how to actually be more real and how to create more love and how to create, more of the things that we're wanting in our lives.
Thank you for that acknowledgement.
Yeah. It's really
most of us who are coaches know that by using our own pain and allowing that to be there, and we learn that it just makes us better coaches and counselors. Yeah. And we also learn and can kind of spread the word that everything that happens to you is a learning experience. Mm-hmm. And most people have that conceptually now, but we don't
really get it
in our bones, don't we? It's just a wonderful way to live.
Would you say that that's one of the things, one of the pieces of what has you actually able to feel more joyful these days? Is that perspective?
Yeah. Ever since I adopted that perspective somewhere in my 20s, life just works. I was in more pain earlier, but that was necessary for me to get to where I am right now.
Well, interesting too. And when you see it as necessary versus you see it as, like, oh shit, I can't believe I'm experiencing this thing. It really changes it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's what am I needing to learn so that I can be with the situation that right now I'm resisting.
Thank you. If there was one thing you wanted to leave listeners with, what would it be?
Well, because of this Getting Real thing is so much about helping people get over controlling the outcome of their interactions. Mm-hmm. I want to just say that one of the essences of that teaching is it's very important to let your partner be unhappy with you sometimes.
Oh, I can feel that one.
You just got to face it. They're going to be unhappy with you sometimes. And see if you can just allow that. That's part of life. I mentioned to you before we started, there's a thing that I call the normal pains of an adult relationship.
Yeah.
And we have to figure out what are the normal pains and what are the ones that I shouldn't tolerate. But just letting your partner be unhappy, being more curious about what that's about, hearing them out, letting them know that it hurts and it scares you when they're unhappy. It kills you. It kills me that I've disappointed you. And don't necessarily take it on that it's your fault. Please, that's almost never your fault. It's almost always them working out their own stuff. But if you can't have space for somebody to be in pain, you'll never get to be more resilient in the face of emotional pain. And I do believe that that's the biggest hang up humanity has right now, is that we're too phobic about emotional pain. What I mean is the normal emotional pains of life.
Uh-huh.
And if we could learn that compassionate self-inquiry practice that I touched on here, and it's in depth in the 5-Minute Relationship Repair book. It guides you right through the whole thing. If you could all learn that, it's like life is a big self-healing journey. And of course, we all need to do some healing.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
And help each other heal.
God, even in just listening to these last 2 minutes, I feel like you've just given such incredible wisdom. So
Thanks.
thank you so much for being here and for having this conversation.
Well, it's been fun talking to you. You're a great interviewer.
Oh, thank you.
I know you have a very successful podcast, and now I know why.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.